Now, the first thing that I've had people say during, I guess, some of the questions that they're posting in the Doodler group is, I can't draw a straight line. My hand is kind of jerky in motion and I can't make a straight line. So this is where I just want to let you know that when you are using your tools and when you're using your shapes, the way this software works is I can draw a straight line with the straight line tool. So there is a straight line that was just drawn. And then if I want to switch from a straight to a curve, I can just go to freehand and I can then go around a curve and do whatever I want. And then I can go back to a straight and do a straight point back up to here. So you don't need to have a really, really steady hand to make sure that you're creating, you know, objects perfectly straight. You just have to change the tool that you're using. So that's the first thing I wanted to show people, is you don't have to have a perfect, you know, non-shaky hand. Now, the other thing is when you are creating a curve, and if I'm going to go over here real quick and turn on my features. Actually, let's just go off of here real quick. Hold on one second, guys. Okay, I'm going to open up my features at the side, and there is different viewing. I have view stitches, view stitch points, view outlines, and then I have a redraw, entry points, and commands. Now here, if I have it on view stitches only, and if my stitch length is longer, so if I have a 3.5 millimeter stitch, and then I turn on my outlines, people sort of say, well, why do you want both on? Because if I'm creating an object, and oh, I don't want to use a straight line, so let's go over to a curve. So here's my curve. If I'm drawing an object and I draw a shape like this that's going all the way around, and when it generates those stitches over top, it's going to actually, when I go to view stitches, it's going to show me that those two aren't exactly lining up. So if I zoom into this right now, and I zoom in here, and you look at this, you can see that this line right here is the line that I drew. But the stitches aren't directly on the line because the stitch length is longer. So if I select that object, and I select it, and then I take the properties, and I change that stitch length from 3.5 millimeters to, let's say, 1.5 millimeters, then you're going to see that it's going to define that object closer. So if you want to have things line up to your artwork, you can, have it line up so that it actually, has a shorter stitch length. Now, I'm going to delete that one as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this up back to the 6:1 mode, because when I create a design, I like to create it at a 6:1 mode, and that's zoom in 600%. I'm going to change it to a 2 millimeter stitch. And then if I were to be creating this design, I'm going to take my tool, I'm going to take my freehand shape, and then I'm going to start to draw on the screen. And I'm just going to draw an object. I can lift my hand off at any point, and then I can continue up to this point. If I want to make sure that I'm keeping nice straight pieces into a point, I can draw each little point, and that way I know I'm going to be defined into those straight objects. I can do it like this as well, but sometimes it will round the edges. So it's all about the behaviors of the software. Now, if I have the stitch mode on right now, and I turn off the stitches, now I'm just viewing outlines. And this is the reason why I might want to just view outlines. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it on screen. Normally I wouldn't be zoomed in this much, but I want you to see what I mean by this. And let's turn off the artwork so it's not going to be visible. There's the original line. If I want to keep things as exact as possible, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the stitch mode, and I'm going to go and I'm going to actually do my doodling in line mode. And it's really kind of the same thing, but this allows me to see my object. So when I'm going back over something, I can see that I'm going right over top of this. And a lot of times when I go and I do all these pieces, when you look at this, a lot of people will see those spaces, because if I'm zoomed in as much as I am, you can see that these lines right here are not exactly together. There's a gap between them. And that's where people end up getting really frustrated, because they think, oh, I can't do this because I can't stay on my lines. It doesn't look nice and clean. So, there I can have a piece off a little bit. I can go here, I can come over here. And if I look at all of these pieces right now at 600%, it doesn't look too bad. If I zoom in even more, so I'm going to zoom in right now, and I'm going to zoom into like 2100%, you can see that there's huge gaps there. And then if I go into my stitches and I go to view stitches, you're going to see that it even looks crazier because it's going to show and all the points to try to retain those lines. Now I'm showing you all of this because I know this is where people kind of get frustrated. They get really picky. They start looking at things and they want to start editing. And yes, you can go in and edit your objects. I can come in here and I can select an object and I can move it. I can add objects if I want to, grab a piece right here and add a node in here. I can add a node right onto this point right here. I can move all of these and spend all kinds of time to make everything line up 100% perfectly. But the problem is all I'm doing is wasting time. When you get to the realization that when you're zoomed in at 2,150%, that's not reality. That's like looking at something in a magnifying glass. When I go to 600%, you see a little bit off, but you still see that it's not perfect. When I go to 300%, you can barely tell, but reality in embroidery is 1-to-1. And when I go to a 1-to-1 ratio and I look at this not in 3D, that little object that I created, you cannot tell if something is off or not. So if you are kind of testing the doodler and you're playing around and you think to yourself, oh, I'm having real issues because everything I'm drawing looks terrible on the screen. Nothing's lining up. I don't have my hand's too shaky. I can't draw a straight line. And people get frustrated for absolutely no reason because they're not really looking at reality. Reality is 1-to-1. You're creating stuff in the doodler, hopefully at 6-to-1, because that's what I train people to do. But if you're a zoomer, you even go in more and things are going to look super off.
Yes, somebody was asking how you transfer from your iPad to your PC.
With the Doodler, there is a free accompanying app for the iPad. And it is a PC-based program, but there is a free app. So you can load it on your app, and 90% of the tools that are available in the PC version are available in the actual app as well. Now, here's the thing. For doodling on the couch, or if you're in an airplane or an airport or sitting on a bus, it's really convenient to be able to doodle on an iPad. But you have to remember that you are only creating something, even with the Magic Pencil, on an 11-inch screen, or smaller. And when you go in then and try to edit your nodes, it's kind of like writing on a piece of rice. I mean, it's way too tiny. So within the app itself, it only saves out one format. The format it saves out is something called JDS. It's a John Deere save file. And the only program that will read a JDS file is the Design Doodler PC version. And when you bring that JDS file into your PC, then you can do all kinds of things like do the fine tuning, the editing, the changing properties, because you kind of have to realize that the app functions great for what it is, a free app, but it's not as powerful as your PC is at home. You don't have as big of a monitor. You don't have as much processing speed. It's going to be a little frustrating if you try to get too detailed on it. And then after you make your changes on your PC, then you save it as a JDX file, which is the native file format. And then you can save it as whatever machine format you want. So there is a couple steps, but the reason why is it's a free app that accompanies the PC version of the software. It's not meant to be a program in itself. So I'm going to bring this up here and show you guys real quick. But here is that design that I created. And I'm coming in really close. And if you guys can see any stitches that are off, I don't know, I mean, there's not much I can give you, but you can't tell. I mean, I'm looking at this from here to here. I'm literally inches away, and I cannot see any spaces between those stitches because this is the actual size. But if I go back to my program, it didn't take me that long. It only took me like 10 minutes to do. But when I look at this here and I start zooming into all of these objects, you can really see that there is a lot of gaps and lines, and it really doesn't look as clean as you might, expect it to, because people, and this is, the same with any software program, people get very, very critical when they're looking at stitches zoomed in like 3,000%. It's just kind of common sense that when you look at it and it's that zoomed in, you're going to end up having some issues on screen. This is not going to look perfect, but again, this is reality right here. And you cannot see any, issues with that design at the actual size that it's created for, which is the 1-to-1 size. So download the Doodler trial because it is free and it doesn't save out stitches that you can sew, but we have lots of lessons. Give it a shot. Don't be overly critical of your work that you're doing when you're zoomed in at 600%, because that's not reality. Reality is the design that stitches out on the machine. So that's pretty much, and so I see, why did I go over the design twice? I saw that question there. Usually with embroidery designs, you try, with using running stitches, you try to have at least 2 passes unless you're doing very, very detailed work. Partially is because a redwork design, a true redwork design, always has 2 passes everywhere. It doesn't have 1 in some places and 3 in others. It always repeats over itself properly. And there is a branching tool within the Doodler that does do that automatically as well. It'll do 2 passes with branching, but you want to make sure you have 2 passes if possible. The other reason why is if you only have 1 pass of thread, if a machine starts stitching and it ties in and then it starts doing a single pass and it doesn't come back over itself at the end of it, if your thread comes out at the beginning when it starts to sew and you don't catch it and you don't go back over it again, when you take it off the machine, you're going to look at it and it's going to look like something's missing, because it is. So it's really kind of an insurance policy, and it generally looks better as well.